Chapter 6, Beast from Air. The previous page, the last page of chapter 5, had Ralph and Piggy, but mostly Ralph saying, you know, I wish that a message could come. I wish there could be some sign a grown-up could send us that would remind us of being, you know, from a bigger civilization, that would refocus our attention and our drive to be rescued. You know, something. And he just wanted that one thing. And they get it here right on this first page. They get a visitor to the island, the first person to show up before or since the kids have arrived. And it's where's it? 95, the second paragraph. The first paragraph talks about there was darkness and no light, and they had all fallen asleep. A sliver of moon rose over the horizon, hardly large enough to make a path of light, even when it sat right down on the water. But there were other lights in the sky that moved fast, winked or went out, though not even a faint popping came down from the battle fought at 10 miles height. So what's happening up in the sky? What's that? A battle, airplane battle. Okay, shooting, but we don't hear noise, we just see lights. Okay, but a sign came down from the world of grown-ups, which is what they wanted. Though at the time there was no child awake to read it. There was a sudden bright explosion and corkscrew trail across the sky. Have you seen that in movies? If a plane gets blown up and it just and they can't control anymore. So a corkscrew. There was a sudden bright explosion and corkscrew trail across the sky, then darkness again and stars. There was a speck above the island, a figure dropping swiftly beneath the parachute. A figure that hung with dangling limbs. The changing winds of various altitudes took the figure where they would. Then 3 miles up, the wind steadied and bore it in a descending curve round the sky and swept it in a great slant across the reef and the lagoon toward the mountain. The figure fell and crumpled among the blue flowers of the mountainside. But now there was a gentle breeze at this height, too, and the parachute flopped and banged and pulled, so the figure, with feet that dragged behind it, slid up the mountain. And so this figure is not responding. It talks about dangling arms and dangling legs, so this figure is unconscious or dead. And the wind just keeps pulling it. If you've ever seen a skydiver, anybody that parachutes, the moment they land, the first thing they do is they start to pull in their parachute so that a wind doesn't take it and drag them away. If you've ever seen that happen, it's very funny, you know, because they can't control it. They can't fight the wind. And so this thing is being pulled up the mountaintop. So the figure with feet that dragged behind it slid up the mountain, yard by yard, puff by puff. The breeze hauled the figure through the blue flowers, over the boulders and red stones, till it lay huddled among the shattered rocks of the mountaintop. Here the breeze was fitful and allowed the strings of the parachute to tangle and festoon, and the figure sat, its helmeted head between its knees, held by a complication of lines. Now here's what's interesting, if you can visualize this parachute man, okay, huddled by the rocks with his head between his knees. But when the breeze blows, it fills up some of that parachute that's become tangled. And that parachute starts to fill, and it makes him sit up. Make sense? And then the wind stops, his parachute deflates, and what does he do? Goes back down. Kind of like a puppet. In essence, he is a puppet now. Okay? Are you visualizing that? So whenever you see the word the breeze blows, that means that there's going to be a rustle of his, parachute, and he's going to sit up. So when the breeze blew, the lines would string taut, and some accident of this pull lifted the head and chest upright, so that the figure seemed to peer across the brow of the mountain. Then each time the wind dropped, the lines would slacken, and the figure bowed forward again, sinking its head between its knees. So, as the stars moved across the sky, the figure sat on the mountaintop and bowed and sank and bowed again. So, as the rest of the night occurred, the passage of time, the stars crossed the skies. This thing just sat up there. Have you ever seen one of those glass ducks that drink? Just keep bobbing. Oh, the drinking ducks. Okay, they just keep doing it over and over. It's like a clock that just keeps going and going and doesn't stop. Maybe some spinning magnets or something. It's very similar. So this, hopefully you were able to get that from the very first few pages. If you were paying attention, you were able to understand. So the thing on the mountain is a message from the other, the other world, the rest of civilization. It's, as of now, we don't know if it's alive or dead, but it just got dragged up a mountain. So one would think you'd awake from that. So maybe there's a corpse, there's a human corpse at the top of the mountain. So Sam and Eric, okay, the twins who pretty much finish each other's sentences, even though they're two people, they're considered Sam and Eric, like it's one word, Sam and Eric. One character, even though it's two people, just because they're so the same, so similar. They fell asleep, okay, and the fire went down. And there was just a little ember, and they were able to get it going. They go, whoa, whew, that was close. Boy, we were going to be waxy. We were going to get yelled at. Oh, good thing. Da 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 da. Okay, and so they were able to save it. And so it's still darkness up there, and they slowly get it going, and they build a little tent of kindling. And then eventually, once the kindling caught, and it says that the tent fell inward, and light spread across the mountaintop where they were. And it's that light that illuminated something sitting up there, that they weren't alone, and they heard things. Page 98. The tent fell inwards and flung a wide circle of light over the mountaintop. Sam? Huh? Sam! Sam looked at Eric irritably. The intensity of Eric's gaze made the direction in which he looked terrible. For Sam had his back to... You ever seen that movie? Where people are facing each other and one person is just like, there's something behind. And you're like, do I look? They're standing behind me, aren't they? It's one of those things. And he's fearful to look because he sees the terror that's in, Sam's face. Or Eric's face, rather. They became motionless, gripped in each other's arms, 4 unwinking eyes aimed and 2 mouths open. And so that shows you that they're speechless, and they just have their eyes and staring at this thing, trying to make it out in the bad light and the flickering, inconsistent light of fire and flame. And they're trying to see it. And eventually, far beneath them, the trees of the forest sighed, then roared. So if you hear trees from a distance roaring, what's making the noise? How can a tree roar? The wind. Okay. I remember one time, it was one of my last baseball games when I was 12 or 13. We were getting ready to go away on vacation. But anyways, there was a tornado watch or tornado warning. We were still playing ball because there was no rain. And out in the outfield, beyond the fence, there was all of this trees and forest. And you could just hear it was just black sky. You just knew we weren't going to get this game in, but we were still out playing. And so the wind just starts blowing. You just hear noise because it was dead silent. And then the trees start to move and make noise, and then all of a sudden you hear the wind just pick up and come through. And then eventually rain and lightning came, but you could just feel the storm coming and hear it, okay, because it was pitch black out. So here they hear from the trees of the forest sighed then roar. The hair on their foreheads fluttered and flames blew out sideways from the fire. 15 yards away from them came the plopping noise of fabric. Well, what happens when the fabric fills up, when the wind fills up the parachute? The thing sits up. So they're looking really closely at this huddled mass. Then all of a sudden the wind blows. What's going to happen? It's going to sit up and look. And if they were already scared, this thing's going to come alive. What do you think is going to happen to little Sam and Eric? How did they respond? They're out of there. Sam and Eric are scared beyond words. Okay? It says that 15 yards away from them came the plopping noise of fabric blown open. Neither of the boys screamed, but the grip of their arms tightened and their mouths grew peaked. For perhaps 10 seconds they crouched like that while the flailing fire sent smoke and sparks and waves of inconstant light over the top of the mountain. Then, as though they had but one terrified mind between them, they scrambled away over the rocks and fled. They took off. Then you see a little space here. Ralph was dreaming. He'd fallen asleep, and he's peaceful, thinking about home. Life's good. Well, that's going to get wrecked here in a moment. As Sam and Eric come in, waking him up, we saw the beast, we saw it. And then there's a lot of commotion. They're scared to go out in the darkness. Ralph calls a meeting. Sam and Eric go tell everybody there's a meeting. And it says that they were scared to go the 4 feet between the huts because of the darkness. And they were scared. Okay? Down at the very bottom of 99, when the meeting happens, actually right around the middle, it says that they lay there listening, at first with doubt, but then with terror to the description the twins breathed at them. So hearing the story, okay, it was first doubt, but then all of a sudden, okay, we're starting to get a little scared. At first with doubt, and then with terror to the description the twins breathed at them between bouts of extreme silence. Soon the darkness was full of claws, full of the awful unknown and mess. That's the worst thing, folks, is the unknown. Okay? You can be scared about things you know, and that's understandable, but the things you are unsure about, the unknown, that's what's scary. Have you ever seen the movie Signs? It's an M. Night Shyamalan movie with Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix. It's an aliens land and terrorize the city and the world. It's a great movie. Oh, yeah. But the thing is, they don't show you, this isn't a spoiler, they don't show you what the aliens look like until the very end, for the most part.
Isn't there like one clip?
There's a clip, but it's so fast.
That part's creepy.
It's great. But it's creepy because you see all of these shadows throughout the movie. You hear noises outside the door. You see a light in a closet, and you're looking under the door at the light, and you see a shadow moving back and forth. You know something's in there, but you don't know what it is and if it's deadly and all of these things. It's that unknown. It's an awesome movie. Okay, if you like suspense and stuff. You just don't know. And then at the climax at the end, when you actually get to see one and the battle or whatever you want to call it transpires, it's really built up. And so here we have the unknown, the darkness, unknowing what that thing is and if these kids are telling the truth or if they're making it up. But this is the most concrete evidence that there is something on the island, because there is something on the island. Okay? But they're able to place that beast label onto this right here. At the very bottom, Ralph took the conch from where it lay on the polished seat and held it to his lips because he was going to blow it. But then he hesitated and did not blow. Well, why do you think he didn't blow? You don't want the beast there. You don't want to, there's proof, even though they haven't physically seen it, the kids have, Sam and Eric. But I'm not going to blow it. He held the shell up instead and showed it to them, and they understood. They understood the meeting's beginning and who's in charge and who's in control, and it's Ralph. They get the retelling by Sam and Eric on 100. There were eyes, teeth, claws. We ran as fast as we could, bashed into things. The beast followed us. I saw it slinking behind the trees, nearly touched. Did it do any of that? Did it? Were they chased down the side of the mountain? No. Okay. The only thing that thing does is this. It's up. Back down. That's it. But the scaredness, the paranoia, they take off and sprint away. Beast followed us. I saw it slinking behind the trees, nearly touched me. Ralph pointed fearfully at Eric's face, which was striped with scars where the brushes had torn him, thinking maybe something happened to him. Was he scratched or was it just him running away? And they find out that he was bleeding. Page 102, 103. There was some discussion, Jack and Piggy and everybody, it kind of breaks down a little bit like the past meetings to some degree. The conch shell, Jack doesn't, Jack and Piggy and all those people, I got the conch. Conch, shouted Jack. We don't need the conch anymore. We know who ought to say things. What good did Simon do speaking, or Bill, or Walter? It's time some people knew they've got to keep quiet and leave deciding things to the rest of us. So you see him asserting his dominance again. Even though this was some sort of democracy, republic, where everybody could speak as long as they had the conch shell. But here he's pretty much saying, people should just be followers and shut up and not think and only do what I tell them to do, in essence. Or what I tell them to think. Ralph could no longer ignore his speech. The blood was hot in his cheeks. You haven't got the conch. Sit down. Jack's face went so white that the freckles showed as clear brown flecks. He licked his lips and remained standing, so defiance. This is a hunter's job. The rest of the boys watched intently. Of course they're watching intently. This is like a tennis match. Have you ever watched one of those? You're watching here, the ball goes over here, you're back and forth. So Jack is defying Ralph. What's going to happen? What are they going to say? Similar to what Simon was doing earlier when he was looking, at Ralph, waiting to see what's he going to do. With regards to the ship on the horizon or Jack and the hunters coming back from the hunt. Don't you all want to be rescued? He looked back at Jack. I said before, the fire is the main thing. Now the fire must be out, because think about it, no one's up there to keep it going. There's no chance to be rescued if there's no fire or smoke. Hasn't anyone got any sense? We've got to relight that fire. You never thought of that, Jack, did you? Or don't any of you want to be rescued? He instantly started thinking about, we should go hunt this thing. Hunt this thing when we've been all over the island. There's no tracks. How are we ever going to hunt this thing? It's a waste of effort, a waste of time, is what Ralph is saying. But Jack always comes back to wanting to hunt. Now think, Jack, is there anywhere on the island you haven't been? There's only... But of course, you remember the tail end where the rocks are all piled up? I've been near there. The rocks make sort of a bridge. There's only one way up. And the thing might live there. All the assembly talked to him. You can imagine them, theories of where it's at. There it's been all along. No wonder we haven't found it. It's off at the end of the island, where you have to cross this little bridge to get out to this pile of rocks. They call it Castle Rock eventually. Over to this Castle Rock, maybe that's where it's at. Of course. Okay, quite. All right, that's where we'll look. If the beast isn't there, we'll go up the mountain and look and light the fire. So we'll go check that. If it's not there, we'll go up to the mountain. We'll look for the beast there, and while we're there, we'll light the mountain, or light the fire on the mountain. Bottom of 103, they decide to, Piggy, they leave Piggy there. Piggy's going to stay in charge of the little ones. Where are we at? Simon and Ralph and Jack and a lot of the other people, they go. Roger, Maurice, all those guys go. 103 down at the bottom, it says, Simon, walking in front of Ralph, felt a flicker of incredulity. A beast with claws that scratched, that sat on a mountaintop, that left no tracks, and yet was not fast enough to catch Sam and Eric? He's adding this up in his mind. This just doesn't make sense. Wouldn't it be able to catch Sam and Eric? And this thing is so mythical that it can, go without, leaving tracks, and it can't catch these kids. He just doesn't really believe that this thing is legit, that this thing can really happen. It's what's going on? He's not calling Sam and Eric a liar. He just, something doesn't add up. Simon is able to use his head. He's able to get rid of the fear. Because remember, he's the one who said, maybe it's just us. Maybe the fear is us. Maybe that's the only thing that we should be afraid of. We should be afraid of some beast. At the bottom of 104, they finally arrive at this Castle Rock. Okay? Ralph parted the screen of grass and looked out. There were only a few more yards of stony ground, and then the two sides of the island came almost together so that one expected a peak of headland. But instead of this, a narrow ledge of rock, a few yards wide and perhaps 15 feet long, continued the island out into the sea. So where the island pinches off, there's actually a little extension. Okay, that a little bridge, rocks, coral mats that you got to cross to get to this pile of rocks out there. There lay another of those pieces of pink squareness that underlay the structure of the island. This side of the castle, perhaps 100 feet high, was the pink bastion they had seen from the mountaintop. So they saw it from up above when they surveyed the island. Okay, skipping down a bit. Behind Ralph, the tall grass had filled with silent hunters. Ralph looked at Jack. You're the hunter. So almost saying, there you go. Here's where they haven't tracked it, but here's where our best guess of the beast is. Go ahead, you're a hunter. Jack went red. Embarrassment. Is he scared again? Remember how he was scared the first time he was going to kill a pig? Okay, he got nervous and couldn't follow through. But he went red. Maybe it's flushed embarrassment. Maybe it's silent anger because he's angry. Oh, you're calling me out. I don't want to do this. So maybe it's a combination of all of that. Something deep in Ralph spoke for him. I'm chief. I'll go. Don't argue. So Ralph says, you know what? I'm chief. I'll go. I'll take off. And so he starts to walk across. I've been all over. Jack mutters, it must be there. Simon mumbled confusedly, I don't believe in the beast. You guys are getting scared more? I just don't believe. So he reasserts the fact that he just doesn't believe in it again. Look at the physical description on 105. As Ralph is walking across the bridge, he looks down, at, a huge drop into the sea where you just see waves. And over on their side, they have the lagoon. It's peaceful over there. The waves come in. Here you see it just crashing and just the power. He says in another centuries or in a few centuries, eventually this little rock formation is going to be, an island in and of itself because the water is just going to crush everything away. So there's a lot of power, a lot of force over here. And that's where he says, now he saw the landsman view of the swell, and it seemed like the breathing of some stupendous creature. Slowly the waters sank among the rocks, revealing pink tables of granite, strange growths of coral, polyp, and weed. Down, down the waters went, whispering like the wind among the heads of the forest. Here's something interesting. There was one flat rock there, spread like a table, and the waters sucking down on the four weedy sides made them seem like cliffs. Then the sleeping Leviathan breathed out, so the sleeping monster of water and force. The waters rose, the weeds streamed, and the water boiled over the table rock with a roar. There was no sense of the passage of waves, only this minute-long fall and rise of water. So the water would rise and roar, and then it would slowly seep out like you're emptying out a bathtub. But the waves would still be coming in. It's just the power of the water. Ralph turned away to the red cliff. They were waiting behind him in the long grass, waiting to see what he would do. Kind of like just staring. What's going to happen? Is the beast going to swoop down and kill him? Is Ralph going to fall? They were all, nervous and such. On 106, Jack ultimately shows up. A sound behind him made him turn. Jack was edging across the ledge. Couldn't let you do it on your own. Now that Ralph did all of the scary heavy work, Jack shows up. He's got to look powerful, right? He can't have Ralph look like he's the main man. Ralph said nothing. He led the way over the rocks, inspected a sort of half cave that held nothing more terrible than a clutch of rotten eggs. So they did not find anything scary. The scariest thing was some rotten eggs left by some bird or other thing that leaves eggs. And at last sat down, looked around him, and tapped the rock with the butt of his spear. Jack was excited. What a place for a fort! Ralph's response? No fresh water. So in Ralph's mind, that ends the conversation. But Jack jumps around. Okay, Ralph says, not me, this is a rotten place. There's no fresh water. Jack gets excited. He goes, you could put a palm trunk under this big rock, because they look down, they climb up real high, and there's a little bridge. And then if any enemies come or the beast comes, we can push down on the lever, and the rock fall down and it can kill them. You remember when they went exploring the island the first time, and they pushed that big rock over, and it just went crushing? Even Roger, when all of the other people show up, come across, and start playing around and whooping and howling, it seems like they forgot the beast, and they're not scared anymore. They're back to kids playing. Ralph remembers, okay, well, the beast isn't here. Well, where is the beast? Where did we say we were going to go? To the mountaintop. And it's not just to look for the beast. What do they have to make there? Fire. And these kids don't want to hear it. They want to play. They want to have this fort. They want to push rocks off these things and have a good time. And so Ralph on the bottom of 107, he goes, there's no signal now. Nothing to show. You're nuts on the signal. That's all we've got. What else can we do? And he just kept saying smoke, smoke. We've got to have smoke. And everybody, and he's getting a lot of resistance. Roger on the last page of this chapter, he says, we've got plenty of time. Everybody's, let's have a fort, let's play. Ralph, there's no fresh water here and no shelter. Not much fresh water. There's no food, no fresh water. So why would you want to be here? This doesn't make sense. We've got that other place. You guys just want to have a fort and play soldier, and this is ridiculous. Okay? Because his main thing is that there might be a ship out there. I'm chief. We've got to make certain. Can't you see the mountain? Look! Look at the mountain. There's no signal. There could be a ship out there and we could be getting rescued today. But we're not because there's no signal going up. Are you all off your rockers? And here's a really interesting line, the second to last line. Mutinously the boys fell silent or muttering. Jack led the way down the rock and across the bridge. You know what it is to mutiny, right? It's a nautical term. It's to mutiny against authority. You remember Pirates of the Caribbean. That's how Jack lost the brown pearl. Yeah, thank you. I know. He lost the black pearl. Okay? And because, Barbossa and everybody else mutinied, took control, and got rid of them. So, they aren't doing that. However, as an adverb to describe their actions and their mood, mutinously the boys fell silent or started to mutter. And you know that they're not muttering good, happy, supportive thoughts under their breath. Okay? This is a huge moment. Okay? It's looking like Ralph versus everybody. And the little ones and Piggy are back at camp, and we know that they really don't count. So these are the big decision makers. Simon is supportive, but Simon isn't very vocal. And so really it's everybody versus Ralph at this point to try to keep the positives going and try to be rescued. So a very important scene, okay, the beast from chapter, a beast from the air.